Captain David Reed stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched the stars through the main window. His ship was small compared to the giant vessels the aliens used, but it was home to him and his crew. They had been flying through space for 3 months now, looking for metals and crystals on empty planets far from Earth. The Galactic Federation had given humans permission to explore only the outer edges of known space. They called it mining duty, but Reed knew better. The aliens were keeping humans busy with simple tasks while they handled the important work. 30 years had passed since first contact, and Earth was still treated like a child among adults. Amy Torres sat at the navigation controls, her fingers dancing across the holographic displays. She was the best pilot Reed had ever worked with, able to fly through asteroid fields that would scare most captains. Next to her, Ben Walsh monitored the ship's engines with the patience of someone who had been fixing machines since he was 10 years old. Dr. Ruth Hayes worked in the science lab, studying samples from the last planet they had visited. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life forms. Most of the time she found nothing more interesting than space bacteria, but she never stopped looking. The Federation had rules about what humans could study, and they were very strict about sharing their knowledge. The communication system made a soft beeping sound. Torres looked at the incoming message and frowned. "Captain, we're getting a transmission from the edge of Federation space. It's not in any language the computer recognizes." Reed walked over to listen. The message was full of harsh sounds and clicking noises. It repeated the same pattern over and over, like a warning or demand. "Record it and send a copy to Federation Command. They'll want to know about this." "Already done, sir," Torres replied. "But the message is being broadcast on multiple frequencies. Whatever's sending it wants to be heard." In the science lab, Dr. Hayes looked up from her microscope. She had been studying the strange transmission for an hour, running it through every analysis program the ship had. The patterns reminded her of something she had seen in old Earth military files, but she couldn't place it. Meanwhile, on the Federation capital world of Synthesis, the alien leaders were meeting in their great council chamber. Prime Coordinator Velith stood at the center, his crystalline body reflecting the light from 1,000 sources. Around him sat representatives from 11 other species, each one ancient and proud. "The transmission appears to be from beyond our borders," Velith announced. "Our long-range sensors show ships approaching from the void between galaxies. They do not respond to our diplomatic channels." Minister Kythos, the Nefari delegate, floated in his gas-filled chamber. "Perhaps they are explorers like ourselves. We should send a peaceful greeting." Node Prime, the synthetic representative, calculated probabilities in seconds. "Unknown vessels approaching Federation space represent a 15.7% chance of hostile intent. Recommend increased patrol schedules and diplomatic outreach." The discussion continued for hours, as it always did. The Federation had not faced a real threat in over 1,000 years. Their advanced technology had made them comfortable, perhaps too comfortable. They had forgotten that the universe could be dangerous. Back on Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan sat in her office deep beneath the Colorado mountains. She had been reading reports from the Outer Rim for days, and what she saw worried her. The Federation's response to the unknown ships was typical: meetings, committees, and careful diplomatic language. Her door chimed, and General Thomas Mitchell entered. He was a big man with scars from the last war on Earth, when humans had fought each other over resources. Now they worked together, but they had not forgotten the lessons of conflict. "The aliens are treating this like a first contact situation," Mitchell said, dropping into a chair. "They're sending greeting messages and preparing welcome ceremonies." Sullivan nodded. "They've never faced a real enemy. Their entire civilization is built on the idea that technology and diplomacy can solve everything." "What about us?" Mitchell asked. "Are we ready?" Sullivan touched a control on her desk. The wall became transparent, showing the view outside. Below them, in massive underground chambers, hundreds of ships waited in darkness. They were not the small exploration vessels the Federation knew about. These were warships, built in secret over 30 years of preparation. "We've been ready since the day we met them," Sullivan said. "The question is whether they'll be smart enough to let us help when the time comes." Dr. Alan Price worked in Laboratory 7, 5 levels down from Sullivan's office. His team had been reverse engineering alien technology for decades, combining it with human innovations in ways the original creators never imagined. They had learned to make Federation shields stronger, weapons more accurate, and engines faster, but they had also learned something else. The aliens had weaknesses they didn't know about. Their peaceful nature had made them predictable. Their long lives had made them careful. Their advanced technology had made them dependent on systems that could be disrupted by someone who understood both biology and engineering. Price's latest project was a virus that could attack the biomechanical systems many alien species used. The Federation considered biological warfare to be barbaric, something that civilized beings had moved beyond. That moral blindness might be exactly what gave humans an advantage. 3 days after the first transmission, Captain Reed's ship detected massive energy signatures at the edge of Federation space. The unknown ships were huge, bigger than anything in the Federation fleet. They moved with purpose, heading directly for the nearest inhabited system. "Captain," Torres called out, "I'm reading weapon charges on those vessels. They're not here to talk." Reed felt his stomach drop. The Federation had 3 patrol ships in that system and about 10 million civilians. Their energy shields were strong, but these unknown ships had weapons that looked like they could punch through anything. "Send a priority message to Earth?" Reed ordered. "Tell them the unknown ships are hostile and moving to attack. Then plot a course for the nearest Federation stronghold." As the horizon's edge turned away from the battle zone, Reed wondered if the Federation really understood what was coming. The aliens had technology and numbers, but they had never faced an enemy that wanted to destroy them. They had protocols for everything except war on Earth. Admiral Sullivan received Reed's message and smiled grimly. The war was about to begin, and the Federation would learn what humans had always known. Sometimes the only way to keep peace was to be very good at fighting. The aliens had kept humans in the background for 30 years, treating them like junior partners in a civilized galaxy. Soon they would discover that humans had been preparing for this day, since the moment they first looked up at the stars. The first Federation world died in 6 hours. Captain Reed watched from the safety of hyperspace as the unknown ships surrounded New Kepler, a crystal mining colony with 3 million inhabitants. The attackers called themselves the Dominion, and they had come to conquer. Their biomechanical ships looked like living things made of metal and flesh. They moved through space like predators, surrounding the Federation defense platforms with practiced ease. The energy weapons that had protected the galaxy for centuries proved useless against hulls that seemed to absorb and redirect the power. "My God," Dr. Hayes whispered as she watched the colony's shields collapse. "They're using some kind of entropy weapon. It's breaking down the molecular bonds in the shield generators." The Dominion ships fired again, and this time their weapons reached the surface. Cities that had stood for hundreds of years crumbled in minutes. The screams coming through the communication channels told Reed everything he needed to know about the enemy's intentions. "Request permission to engage," Reed said into his microphone. "We can't just watch this happen." The response from Federation Command came quickly. "Negative. All human vessels ordered to retreat to safe zones. This is a Federation matter." Torres looked at her captain with anger in her eyes. "Sir, we have weapons. We could help." Reed wanted to agree, but orders were orders. The Federation had made it clear that humans were not to be involved in military operations. They were considered too primitive, too violent for civilized warfare. As his ship jumped away from the dying world, Reed wondered if the aliens would regret that decision. On Synthesis, the Federation Council was in chaos. The Dominion had destroyed 3 worlds in as many days, and their fleets were moving deeper into Federation space. The aliens had expected a negotiated solution, but the invaders were not interested in talking. Prime Coordinator Velith stood before emergency session, his crystalline form dim with worry. The enemy ships are immune to our primary weapons. Their biotechnology adapts to our attacks within hours. Minister Kythos floated in his chamber, his gas form rippling with distress. We must attempt diplomatic contact. All species can be reasoned with. Negative, Node Prime replied, his mechanical voice flat. Analysis of enemy communications shows no interest in negotiation. They consider all Federation citizens to be resources for collection. The word collection made the chamber fall silent. The Dominion was not just conquering worlds, they were taking prisoners. Early reports suggested they were experimenting on captured Federation citizens, trying to learn how their technology worked. Dr. Hayes had been studying the enemy ships from the recordings Reed's crew had made. Working alone in her lab, she had discovered something that made her blood run cold. The Dominion's biotechnology was not just advanced, it was intelligent. The ships were actually alive, grown rather than built, but living things had weaknesses. Hayes had spent years studying diseases on Earth, learning how viruses and bacteria could attack biological systems. The Federation had eliminated most diseases from their worlds, considering them primitive threats. That knowledge gap might be exactly what was needed. She began working on a project that would horrify her alien colleagues. Using samples of Earth viruses, she started developing weapons that could attack the Dominion's bioships. It was brutal work, but Hayes knew that sometimes survival required ugly choices. Meanwhile, the Dominion continued their advance. Their strategy was simple and effective. They would surround a Federation world, destroy its defenses, and then land armies to collect useful technology and citizens. The Federation's response was always the same: evacuation followed by diplomatic protest. General Mitchell stood in the war room beneath Earth's surface, watching the battle reports with growing frustration. The Federation had the technology to fight back, but they were using it like police officers trying to arrest bank robbers. They were playing by rules that the enemy ignored. They're losing because they don't understand what they're fighting, he said to Admiral Sullivan. The Dominion isn't trying to conquer territory. They're harvesting resources, including people, Sullivan nodded. The Federation's never faced an enemy that wanted to destroy them. They think every conflict can be resolved with enough talking. What? About our people? Reed's ship is still out there, and there are 2 other human crews in the outer systems. They're observers for now, Sullivan replied. But that's about to change. The change came when the Dominion attacked the Federation's main supply depot at Gamma Station. The base had enough weapons and ships to supply 100 worlds, and its loss would cripple the Federation's ability to fight back. 3 Federation battleships moved to defend it, but they were outnumbered 10-1. Captain Reed's ship was the closest human vessel to the battle. He watched as the Federation ships tried to hold their ground against impossible odds. Their energy shields flared and died under sustained bombardment. Their weapons barely scratched the Dominion's biomechanical hulls. Sir, Torres said quietly, we can't just watch them die. Reed looked at his crew. They were all thinking the same thing. The Federation had treated humans like children for 30 years, but children grow up. Maybe it was time to show what humans had learned. Battle stations. Reed ordered, Amy, take us in. Ben, give me everything the engines have got. Ruth, I hope you've been working on something useful. Dr. Hayes looked up from her console. I've got a prototype weapon that might work against their bioships. It's based on Earth viruses, modified to attack their organic systems. Will it work? Reed asked. Only one way to find out, Hayes replied. The Horizon's Edge dropped out of hyperspace behind the Dominion fleet. The human ship was tiny compared to the enemy vessels, but it moved with a speed and precision that caught them off guard. Reed's crew had trained for this moment for years. Even if they didn't know it, Torres piloted the ship through the battle zone like she was flying through an asteroid field. Ben pushed the engines beyond their design limits, giving them speed that the enemy couldn't match. And Dr. Hayes fired her experimental weapon at the nearest Dominion ship, the biomechanical. Vessel shuddered as the virus-based weapon hit its hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship began to convulse, its living metal twisting and buckling. The virus was eating through its organic systems, causing massive system failures. "It's working," Hayes shouted. "The virus is spreading through their biomechanical networks." Reed opened a channel to the Federation ships. "This is Captain Reed of the human vessel Horizon's Edge. We have a weapon that can hurt them. Fall back and let us work." The Federation commander was too desperate to argue. His ships pulled back while the small human vessel darted between the enemy fleet, spreading Hayes's viral weapon. One by one, the Dominion ships began to fail as their organic systems were consumed. When the battle was over, 3 Federation worlds had been saved. But the cost was becoming clear. The Dominion had tested the Federation's defenses and found them lacking. They would return with more ships and better weapons. In the aftermath, Prime Coordinator Veleth sent a message to Earth that would change everything. The Federation requests immediate human military assistance. All previous restrictions are lifted, full authority granted. Admiral Sullivan read the message and smiled. The Federation had finally realized what they were facing. Now, it was time to show them what humans had been preparing for all these years. The Federation leaders expected 3 human ships to answer their call for help. Instead, they watched in shock as space itself seemed to tear open, revealing over 200 human vessels emerging from some kind of advanced cloaking technology. The ships were sleek and predatory. Nothing like the small exploration craft they had seen before. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the flagship Retribution, watching the alien space station grow larger on her screens. Behind her, the largest human fleet ever assembled waited for orders. Every ship had been built in secret, using technology that combined the best of human engineering with stolen alien science. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "the Federation is requesting permission to board and coordinate our attack." Sullivan smiled coldly. "Tell them we'll be happy to coordinate. But this time, we do things the human way." When the alien delegation arrived at the human flagship, they could barely hide their shock. The Federation representatives had spent centuries dealing with primitive human technology. The ship they boarded looked like something from their own most advanced laboratories, but wrong somehow. Deadlier. Prime Coordinator Veleth's crystalline form reflected the harsh lighting of the human ship. Around him, Minister Kythos floated nervously in his portable gas chamber, while Node Prime's mechanical systems struggled to analyze the unfamiliar technology surrounding them. "Admiral Sullivan," Veleth began carefully, "we are grateful for your assistance. However, we believe human forces would be most effective serving as support elements for our main fleet." Sullivan looked at the alien leader for a long moment before activating a holographic display. The image showed the Dominion fleet positions, supply lines, and strategic weaknesses that Federation intelligence had completely missed. "Your people have been fighting this war like it's a police action," Sullivan said bluntly. "The Dominion has been studying your tactics for years. They know exactly how you'll respond to every situation." The hologram shifted to show battle recordings from the past week. Every Federation response had followed the same pattern: form, defensive lines, attempt negotiation, retreat when overwhelmed. The Dominion had turned it into a science. Captain Reed entered the briefing room. Accompanied by Dr. Hayes, his small ship had been upgraded with military systems that made it deadlier than most Federation cruisers. Hayes carried a datapad filled with research that would horrify the alien scientists. "The Dominion's bioships have a critical weakness," Hayes explained, activating her own display. "Their organic systems can be attacked using modified Earth viruses. I've developed several variants that can spread through their fleet networks." Minister Kythos recoiled in his chamber. "Biological warfare is forbidden by galactic law. We cannot engage in such barbaric tactics." "Your laws assume you're fighting someone who follows them," Sullivan replied. "The Dominion is harvesting your people for experiments. They're not going to file a complaint about our methods. Node Prime systems process the tactical data. Human battle doctrine appears to prioritize unpredictable engagement patterns. This contradicts optimal strategic theory. General Thomas Mitchell, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. Optimal strategy assumes your enemy is rational. The Dominion is rational, but they're also arrogant. They think they know how every species fights because they've been watching you for decades. They haven't been watching us, Admiral Sullivan added. We're about to show them what that oversight costs. The first joint operation began 3 hours later. Federation forces engaged the Dominion fleet in conventional battle, following their standard defensive protocols. The enemy responded as expected, deploying their bioships in formations designed to counter Federation tactics. Then the human ships arrived. Captain Lisa Morgan commanded the stealth destroyer Ghost Hawk, one of 50 vessels that had been invisible throughout the initial engagement. Her ships materialized behind Dominion supply convoys, targeting the biomechanical support vessels that kept the main fleet operational. The enemy had never faced stealth technology like this. Federation cloaking was energy-based and could be detected by advanced sensors. Human stealth used principles borrowed from nature, ships that bent light and absorbed energy signatures, becoming invisible to both electronic and biological detection. Systems.Dr. Price's experimental ship Prometheus led another group, deploying Hayes's viral weapons against the Dominion's bioships. The viruses spread through the enemy fleet like wildfire, causing system failures that the aliens couldn't understand or counter, but it was General Mitchell's assault on the main Dominion command ship that showed the aliens what human tactics really meant. Instead of attacking the heavily defended vessel directly, he used a captured Federation cargo ship as a Trojan horse. The cargo ship transmitted standard distress signals as it drifted toward the enemy lines. When Dominion forces moved to capture it, they found it was full of human Marines equipped with armor that combined Federation shields with Earth weapons technology. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Federation had ever witnessed. Human soldiers fought through the biomechanical corridors of the Dominion ship, using tactics learned from centuries of Earth warfare. They used explosives, close combat weapons, and coordination that turned every engagement into an overwhelming assault. They fight like pack hunters, Minister Kythos observed with horrified fascination. Each individual is formidable, but together they become something far more dangerous. The Federation had always fought wars like chess matches, careful moves with predictable responses. Humans fought like wolves, using teamwork and instinct to overwhelm enemies that expected rational behavior. Within hours, the Dominion's local command structure had collapsed. Their bioships, infected with Hayes's viruses, began turning on each other as their organic control systems failed. The supply convoys that Morgan's stealth ships had destroyed left the main fleet without ammunition or fuel. Captain Reed found himself leading a mixed crew of humans and aliens in pursuit of fleeing Dominion vessels. His Federation crewmates watched in amazement as human tactics turned a potential defeat into a complete rout. "How did you know they would respond this way?" asked his Viridian navigator. Reed smiled grimly. "Because we've been watching them too. The difference is, we were planning for war while your people were planning for peace." The victory at the Outer Rim changed everything. For the first time since the invasion began, Dominion forces had been not just defeated, but destroyed. The bioships that escaped carried news of human capabilities back to the main Dominion fleet. In the aftermath, Admiral Sullivan reviewed the battle reports with satisfaction. Her forces had performed exactly as planned, proving that human military doctrine could overcome superior numbers and technology. But this was just the beginning. "The Federation is starting to understand what we're capable of," she told her staff. "The question is whether they're prepared for what comes next." General Mitchell nodded toward the tactical display showing Dominion fleet movements. They're regrouping for a major assault. This time they'll be ready for human tactics. "Then we'll have to evolve?" Sullivan replied. "The beauty of human warfare is that we never fight the same battle twice." Dr. Price entered the room carrying a datapad full of new weapon designs. "I've been analyzing the captured Dominion technology. I think I know how to turn their greatest strength into a weakness. Sullivan looked at the research and smiled. The Federation had asked for human help, but they had no idea what they had unleashed. Earth's children had grown up in the darkness between stars, learning to fight wars that their alien allies couldn't even imagine. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humanity had become. The war changed after the first human victory. The Dominion began retreating from Federation space, but they burned everything behind them. Worlds that had taken centuries to build were left as smoking ruins, their populations either dead or taken as slaves. Admiral Sullivan stood in the command center of her flagship, watching reports from the front lines. Human forces were pursuing the enemy across 3 star systems, but the cost was becoming clear. The Federation had asked for help, but they were learning that human assistance came with human methods. "Sir," General Mitchell reported, "our ground forces have secured the mining colony at Delta 7. The Dominion used biological weapons on the civilian population before retreating." Sullivan's expression remained cold. "Activate Protocol 9. I want every Dominion facility in this sector destroyed. No survivors, no prisoners, no exceptions." The order went out across the human fleet. Protocol 9 was total warfare, the systematic destruction of enemy resources, infrastructure, and morale. It was a strategy that the Federation had never used because they had never faced an enemy that required it. Dr. Hayes worked in her expanded laboratory aboard the science vessel Darwin, developing increasingly sophisticated biological weapons. The Federation scientists assigned to help her were horrified by what they were creating. The viruses she designed didn't just kill, they were engineered to cause maximum psychological impact on Dominion forces. Dr. Hayes, the Nefari scientist, Dr. Quinn said through his translation device, "These weapons violate every principle of civilized warfare. They cause unnecessary suffering." Hayes looked up from her microscope with tired eyes. "The Dominion has been experimenting on captured Federation citizens for months. They're using your people as living laboratories to test new bioweapons. Do you want me to fight them with good intentions?" Dr. Quinn's gas form shimmered with distress. "But if we become like them, what have we saved?" "We've saved the people who will still be alive when this is over," Hayes replied coldly. "War isn't about maintaining moral superiority. It's about survival." The Federation forces were struggling to adapt to human tactics. Captain Reed found himself caught between loyalty to his own species and growing friendship with his alien crewmates. His ship had been assigned to a joint task force attacking a Dominion fortress world. The assault plan was purely human in design. Instead of attempting to disable the enemy defenses, they would overwhelm them with coordinated strikes from multiple directions. The Federation ships would provide covering fire while human Marines assaulted the surface installations. "Captain," his Viridian navigator asked, "why don't we attempt to negotiate with the fortress garrison? They might surrender if offered reasonable terms." Reed looked at the tactical display showing the fortress's biomechanical defenses. "Because they're not going to surrender. The Dominion doesn't think like us. They see this as a test of strength, not a political disagreement." The battle for the fortress world lasted 3 days. Human forces used captured Dominion biotechnology against the defenders, turning their own weapons into instruments of destruction. The psychological impact was devastating. The enemy found themselves fighting monsters created from their own flesh and metal. Federation observers watched in horror as human soldiers systematically destroyed every defensive position. There was no attempt to preserve enemy equipment or take prisoners. The assault was designed to send a message to other Dominion forces: surrender or die. The turning point came during the Battle of Crimson Nebula. General Mitchell had devised a strategy that would trap the entire Dominion battle fleet, but it required using a Federation world as bait. The plan was brilliant, brutal, and something that would have been impossible for the aliens to consider. "You want to evacuate Kepler Prime and let the Dominion think they've won a major victory?" Prime Coordinator Veleth asked in disbelief. "That's exactly what I want," Mitchell replied. We'll make it look like a desperate evacuation, leaving behind enough valuable technology to make them think they've captured something important. The evacuation was carefully staged. Federation civilians were quietly moved to safety while human forces prepared hidden positions throughout the Crimson Nebula. The Dominion took the bait, sending their main fleet to secure what they believed was a strategic victory. When the enemy fleet moved into the nebula, they found themselves surrounded by human ships that had been waiting in positions that Federation technology couldn't have detected. The battle was swift and decisive, Captain. Morgan's stealth destroyers disabled the enemy command vessels while Dr. Price's experimental weapons tore through biomechanical HULs like tissue paper. The Dominion's main invasion force was completely destroyed within hours, but the victory came at a cost that the Federation was only beginning to understand. Human forces had proven themselves to be superior warriors, but they were not the junior partners the aliens had expected. Admiral Sullivan's demands for post-war territorial concessions revealed that humanity had never intended to return to their previous status. "What do you want?" Veleth asked during a private meeting with Sullivan. "What we've always wanted," Sullivan replied. "Respect, resources, and the guarantee that we'll never again be underestimated." The Federation was beginning to realize that they had created something they couldn't control. Human military technology now surpassed their own in many areas. Human tactics had proven superior to alien strategy, and human willingness to do whatever was necessary to win had turned the tide of a war that seemed hopeless. Dr. Hayes presented her final report to the Joint Scientific Committee. The biological weapons she had developed had been devastatingly effective, but they had also changed the nature of warfare in the galaxy. The Federation's enemies would now have to consider the possibility that any conflict might escalate to the level of biological warfare. "We've opened a door that can't be closed," she told the assembled scientists. "The Dominion will develop countermeasures to our viruses. Other species will begin their own biological weapons programs. The galaxy is about to become a much more dangerous place." But the danger was controlled by human hands. Earth's fleet now patrolled Federation space with authority that went far beyond their original mandate. Human commanders like Captain Reed led mixed crews that followed human discipline and tactics. The aliens who had once looked down on humanity now competed for positions on human-led vessels. They had learned that in a galaxy where warfare was becoming increasingly sophisticated, the species that understood conflict best would be the ones in charge. General Mitchell reviewed the casualty reports from the latest battles. Human losses were minimal compared to what the Federation had suffered before their intervention. The difference was doctrine. Humans fought to win, while the aliens had been fighting to avoid losing. "The war's almost over," he told Admiral Sullivan. "Dominion forces are retreating beyond the galactic rim. But what happens next?" Sullivan looked at the star charts showing human patrol routes extending deep into former Federation territory. "Next, we make sure this never happens again. The galaxy has learned that there are predators in the void between stars. They're going to need shepherds to keep them safe." The Federation had asked Earth for help, but they had received something far more significant. They had gained protectors who understood that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to be exceptionally good at war. The question was whether they were prepared for the price of that protection. The war ended not with negotiation but with complete Dominion withdrawal beyond the galactic rim. Their biomechanical fleets, decimated by human tactics and biological weapons, fled into the void between galaxies. For the first time in Federation history, an external threat had been not just repelled but utterly destroyed as a fighting force. Admiral Kate Sullivan walked into the Federation Council chambers not as a supplicant seeking favor, but as the commander of the most powerful military force in known space. Behind her came General Mitchell, Dr. Price, and a full honor guard of human Marines, whose presence made several alien delegates visibly nervous. The chambers had been rebuilt after Dominion raids, but the scars remained. Blast marks on the walls served as reminders of how close the Federation had come to complete destruction. Now those same walls bore the emblems of human military units that had saved the galaxy. Prime Coordinator Velith stood to address the assembly, his crystalline form reflecting light that seemed dimmer than before. Admiral Sullivan, the Federation owes humanity a debt that can never be fully repaid. We are prepared to offer expanded mining rights and increased representation. Sullivan's response was calm but firm. The Federation will offer humanity equal representation on the Council, unrestricted access to all Federation technologies, and the right to maintain our military fleet at full operational strength. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Minister Kyphos floated nervously in his gas chamber. Admiral, surely such extensive military forces are no longer necessary. The threat has been eliminated. General Mitchell stepped forward, his scarred face showing no emotion. Human forces currently maintain security control over 17 star systems. Until we're confident that no new threats will emerge, we'll need to keep those systems under military administration. The implication was clear. Humanity was not asking for these concessions. They were stating new facts. The Federation could accept the changes, or they could try to force out the military power that had saved them. Given recent demonstrations of human capabilities, the choice was obvious. Dr. Price activated a holographic display showing the latest human technological developments. Ships that could maintain full shields while cloaked, weapons that adapted to enemy defenses in real time, and biological systems that could repair themselves using any available organic matter. The humans had not just learned from their alien teachers, they had surpassed them. These are the systems that will protect Federation space, Price explained. Human engineering combined with alien science has created capabilities that exceed anything previously developed. Node Prime calculated. Rapidly, human technological advancement rate suggests exponential development curves. Projection indicates continued military superiority for the foreseeable future. The synthetics analysis was accurate but incomplete. What the aliens were seeing was not just technological advancement, but a fundamental change in galactic power structure. Earth had revealed capabilities that made them the dominant military force in known space. Captain Reed, now promoted to admiral, commanded the new joint patrol fleets that secured Federation borders. His crews were mixed human and alien, but the command structure made authority clear. The Federation species, who had once considered humans primitive, now competed for positions under human leadership. The transformation was visible in every aspect of Federation society. Human tactical doctrine was being taught in alien military academies. Human technology was being integrated into Federation infrastructure. Human languages were becoming necessary for advancement in scientific and military careers, but the most significant change was psychological. The Federation had spent millennia believing that their peaceful, diplomatic approach was the highest form of civilization. The Dominion War had taught them that sometimes survival required capabilities they had abandoned centuries ago. Dr. Hayes had established biological research facilities on 12 Federation worlds. Her work continued the development of defensive systems against future bioweapon threats, but also maintained humanity's advantage in biological warfare. The Federation scientists who worked with her had learned to appreciate the deadly efficiency of Earth's approach to conflict. "We're not the same species we were 5 years ago," Hayes told her research team during a recent briefing. "We've learned to think like predators because that's what survival required. The question is whether we can maintain that edge during peacetime." The answer came when long-range sensors detected new ships approaching from the galactic rim. The signatures were Dominion, but different, larger vessels with more advanced biomechanical systems. The enemy had returned with reinforcements. Seeking revenge for their earlier defeat, the Federation's response was immediate panic. Emergency sessions were called, evacuation plans were activated, and diplomatic channels were opened in hopes of negotiating with the approaching fleet. It was the same pattern that had failed so completely during the first invasion. Humanity's response was entirely different. Admiral Sullivan convened her war council not to discuss defensive strategies. but to plan an offensive that would end the Dominion threat permanently. The fleet that emerged from Earth's hidden shipyards was twice the size of the force that had won the previous war. The ships themselves were designs that no alien had ever seen. Human engineering had evolved during the years of peace, creating vessels that combined every lesson learned from the first conflict. They were faster, deadlier, and more sophisticated than anything in the Federation's databases. The final battle took place in the void between galaxies, far from any inhabited world. The Dominion reinforcement fleet arrived expecting to face the same predictable Federation tactics they had studied for decades. Instead, they encountered something that defied every assumption about galactic warfare. Human forces struck first, using stealth technology to position their fleet inside the enemy formation before the battle began. The assault was coordinated across multiple dimensions: conventional weapons, biological warfare, electronic disruption, and psychological operations that turned Dominion bioships against each other. The enemy's surrender came after 6 hours of systematic destruction. The Dominion had arrived with enough force to conquer a dozen star systems. They departed as broken refugees, carrying news of human military superiority to whatever remained of their civilization. The message sent to any other potential threats was unmistakable. The Federation was now under Earth's protection, and that protection had very sharp teeth. Any species considering aggression against the galaxy's peaceful worlds would have to consider whether they were prepared to face humanity's full military might. Captain Amy Torres, now commanding her own heavy cruiser, led the patrol fleet that escorted the defeated Dominion ships to the galactic boundary. Her crew was a mixture of humans and aliens who had learned to work together under human tactical doctrine. The efficiency would have been impossible under the old Federation system. "Captain," her Viridian science officer reported, "we're detecting probe signals from an unknown civilization beyond Dominion space. They appear to be studying our weapon signatures." Torres reviewed the sensor data with the calm professionalism that had become standard in human-led operations. "Send the standard warning. Any unauthorized approach to Federation space will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." The response protocols were purely human in origin. No lengthy diplomatic exchanges, no committee meetings to determine proper procedure. The galaxy had learned that clear communication and demonstrated capability were more effective than endless negotiation. 5 years had passed since the end of the Dominion War. The Federation existed much as it had before, but the reality of power had shifted completely. They remained a peaceful alliance of species dedicated to scientific advancement and cultural exchange, but they were protected by military forces that operated according to very different principles. Earth's influence extended far beyond military affairs. Human approaches to problem-solving had been integrated into Federation research programs. Human efficiency had streamlined administrative processes that had been mired in bureaucracy for centuries. Human pragmatism had replaced alien idealism in areas where results mattered more than principles. The transformation was visible in the newest Federation vessels. Ships designed using human engineering principles could outperform anything built before the war. The crews that operated them followed tactical doctrines developed in Earth's military academies. Even the peaceful exploration missions now carried weapons capable of defending themselves against serious threats. Dr. Price had established research facilities throughout Federation space, continuing the development of hybrid technologies that combine the best aspects of human and alien science. His latest projects included defensive systems that could adapt to unknown threats and communication networks that could function even under enemy jamming. "We've created something that didn't exist before," he told Admiral Sullivan during their monthly review meeting. "A civilization that's both peaceful and prepared for war. The Federation species get to maintain their ideals because we're willing to do whatever's necessary to protect them." Sullivan nodded as she reviewed reports from across the galaxy. Human patrol fleets maintained security in regions that had been abandoned after the Dominion attacks. Human-trained forces were helping rebuild worlds that had been devastated during the war. Human technology was solving problems that had seemed impossible just a few years earlier. But perhaps most importantly, human presence had changed how the galaxy thought about conflict. The Federation species had learned that sometimes the best way to preserve peace was to be exceptionally good at fighting. They had discovered that strength, properly applied, was more effective than weakness disguised as moral superiority. The final scene took place on the bridge of Torres's cruiser as they encountered a probe from yet another unknown civilization. The device transmitted standard mathematical sequences indicating peaceful intent, but also carried sensor arrays clearly designed for military reconnaissance. "Standard response, Captain?" her tactical officer asked. Torres considered the situation. The probe's builders were obviously testing Federation defenses, trying to determine whether this galaxy was worth the effort of conquest. 5 years ago, the Federation would have responded with diplomatic overtures and cultural exchange programs. Now they had better options. "Send them the Dominion battle recordings," she ordered. "All of them. Let them see what happens to species that mistake our peaceful nature for weakness." The probe received the data transmission and departed quickly, carrying news of human capabilities back to whatever civilization had sent it. The message was clear: the Federation was under new management, and the new managers had very different ideas about how to handle potential threats. Earth had let the aliens feel safe for 30 years, learning their strengths and weaknesses while building capabilities they never suspected. When the time came to unleash destruction on their enemies, humanity had been ready. Now they had created something new, a galactic civilization that could maintain peace because it was prepared for war. The galaxy was safer, more prosperous, and more advanced than it had ever been. The Federation species continued their research, exploration, and cultural development under the protection of forces they still didn't fully understand. They had learned not to question the methods of their protectors because the results spoke for themselves. Admiral Sullivan stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching the stars that now fell under human protection. The war was over, but vigilance continued. Somewhere in the void between galaxies, new threats were always emerging. When they came, they would find a galaxy that had learned the most important lesson in the universe. Sometimes the only way to keep peace is to be very, very good at war.